Welcome to this week's blog. Let's talk about Hollywood. Do you enjoy going to the movies? You know, my wife and I do, but really we haven't been in quite a while because, frankly, there's not much out there to see. You know, Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 talks about this filter, that we shouldn't put things into our hearts and mind unless they're pure and lovely and noble and such. And frankly, Hollywood doesn't make that kind of material. However, last year, about this time, Easter of last year, there was a TV miniseries called The Bible. It was hugely received. It was very, very successful. Well, with that, Hollywood did take notice. And because the Bible miniseries did so well on TV, this year there's some movies coming out. There's about a dozen movies coming out that are either based somewhat on the Bible or have Christian themes through it. So if you want to get Hollywood's attention, you do so through the box office. And I'm not endorsing these films or telling you to go out and see them, but I think God has given us a chance, again, to reach people. You know, I've been saying for a while that there's some dark times coming, and then we've seen some of that, and every time you look at a headline, it seems to be getting darker. But before we get there, I think there's going to be a chance of revival. And I think God's going to give us tools. Last week I talked about the blood moons. I think that's going to be a tool because people are going to be asking about it and talking about it. And I think with Hollywood movies coming out, the same thing will be happening. You know, now we can look at the content and argue about the content, or we can use this and say, let's engage people in conversations and get the gospel to them and talk to them about Christ. The first movie that's coming out, it's already out, February 28th it opened, is called The Son of God. This really is based on the movie series, the TV series. Why they were shooting that, recently I was able to hear, I was at a conference, I heard Roma Downey and Mark Burnett, who wrote this and produced this film, they talked about that, why they were doing the miniseries. Roma said, you know what, this is really good, we should shoot something for film. So they did some additional scenes, and that became this movie. Well, its first weekend out, it was number 2 in the box office. So people are going to see it and people are watching it. Now, I know you're going to look at it and say, well, it's not 100% accurate. Is that what we need to be focused on? Or should we say, let's talk about the story of Jesus? I mean, how many movies give us a chance to sit down and talk about Jesus with other people? Another movie coming out is one called God's Not Dead. The release date for this one is March 21st. Now this is interesting because our college campuses and our universities are full of lies about God. And in this case here, Kevin Sobe is the star in that. He's a college professor. And there's a student in there, and this student has to pass this philosophy class in order to get his degree. If he doesn't pass the class, he doesn't graduate. Well, the college professor wants every student to sign a declaration proclaiming that God is dead. Well, this student who's a believer just can't do that. So he speaks up and kind of challenges the professor. And this begins the whole movie, basically. Now, this student has to prove that God's not dead, that God is alive. And if he can't do it, he's going to fail the class. If he fails the class, he won't graduate. So now here's the challenge behind it. Could you do that? Could you sit down with a coworker or a family member or a friend and explain God in such detail that they would have no doubt that God's alive and well? That's kind of the theme for this movie. The next one coming out is called Heaven is Real. Now this is based on a story, based on a book that became very popular. It's a pastor and his son. His son passes away for a brief period and comes back and says he saw heaven, and the stories behind that. Greg Kinnear stars as the father in this, so this is coming out. Another movie coming out is called Mom's Night Out. Now, this is a preview that my wife did see, and she says she just laughed and laughed and laughed. She thought this was the greatest movie. Right now in America, our family situation is being attacked, marriage is being attacked, and this movie talks about the virtues of motherhood, you know, and the pleasure of being a mom, and so on and so forth. It's a comedy. It stars Patricia Heaton, who is a believer. She shared her testimony at this conference. Another young lady, Andrea Logan White, who also stars in this movie, she shares her testimony. And I don't want to go too long here, but she says, you know, she was in the Hollywood scene and she was trying to be an actress and nothing was working out. And, you know, in her car on Sunset Boulevard, she just broke down crying one day and she cried out to God. Didn't even know who God was. Cried out to God. God, if you're real, just give me a sign. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you've been that desperate before. Well, while she's in this act of desperation, a car pulls up next to her, and it's an older gentleman, and he honks the horn, and he has a piece of paper, and on it is written a radio station, and he points to it, and he points to her and points to it. Well, she doesn't pay much attention, but then she turns the radio on, and it's a preacher. And he says, if you're wondering, if you're questioning if God loves you, let me tell you, he does. And as this preacher preached, it was exactly the words that she needed to hear. And she went to turn to the guy in the car, and he was gone. So she says God literally sent her an angel. but she became she doesn't know it, but she didn't know at the time, but she became a believer at that second. And because of some of the drug use in her background, doctors told her she couldn't have kids. Well, she married a fine Christian man, and now she's the mother of 3, and they have a great Christian family. Just a wonderful story. She's involved in that movie, and that's kind of what that movie's about. Also coming out is a movie called Persecuted. This is due for May 9th. This is a movie about, religious freedoms. It deals with the Washington and the political scene, and basically you have one person left. There is an act being put through Congress called the Religious Equality Act, and the main character won't sign it because it really wipes away Christianity, and he holds to his gun and he won't give in on it, and if he doesn't sign it, the bill won't pass. Well, it's a political thriller, and the whole thing comes around to him being set up and so on and so forth, and he's being persecuted for taking a stand for Christ. So it's a political thriller the world will see, but it gives us a chance to talk about religious freedoms, and more importantly, it shows us what it means to take a stand for Jesus. Another movie coming out, this one is due in August, is called When the Game Stands Tall. Now, this is a true story about a high school football team. Unbelievably, they won 151 straight games. Now, to put that in perspective, that's 20 years. Can you imagine 20 years without a loss? The coach, was an all-time, coach and so on and so forth. But after this streak is done, 151 straight wins, what happens is some tragedy happens. And the coach and the players have to look at this and say, what's really important in life? Is winning football games the most important thing? And we have a lot of people who are sports crazy, and that's all they think about. But when it comes down to it, what's really important? What has virtue? What has value? What's the purpose? And that's kind of the theme, through this. It's a football story, but you're going to see virtue and godly purpose and so on and so forth. So it's kind of like Facing the Giants, if you remember that movie. It's a football movie, but it's not a football movie. Also coming out is a movie called Left Behind. Now, I've not met anybody from this movie. I've not seen anything on this. Some of these movies I've seen the trailers to. The Persecuted trailer is great. I was really excited about that. But this one, Tim LaHaye said that he's not real excited about this, and maybe so. And I'm not saying it's going to be a great movie. However, it's going to talk about the rapture. It's going to give us a chance to talk about the rapture. How many people are even going to question what that is? So that opens the doors for us to say, well, there will be a day when Jesus will return. There will be a day when you need to be right with God. And that will give us a chance to really share that. Also coming out is a movie called The Letters. This is about Mother Teresa. And when she left the convent and went out into the streets to help the poor, how she was kind of rejected for that. And she wrote letters. She poured her hearts out to some people she trusted. And now the content of those letters are becoming a movie. So again, it would give us a chance to talk about just serving God, loving God, being there for God, so on and so forth. Another movie coming out, there's a lot, isn't there, is one called Ragamuffin. Now, Ragamuffin is the true story of Rich Mullins. If you've not heard about Rich Mullins, he was the one who wrote the song, Our God is an Awesome God. Rich Mullins was on fire for God, and he was not willing to cut corners. He wasn't willing to compromise, and because of that, he somewhat became a rebel. But this will tell the life story of him. So to get a story of someone who's a follower of Christ, a lover of Christ on the screen, to me is pretty valuable. They are cycling this around the country to see how well it does. It will be in Arizona on March 22nd. So if you go on the website and look at it, you can see where that plays. And the last one I'm going to share with you is one called The Unfair Movie. The Unfair Movie is about a radio talk show host, and what he does is he takes on the establishment. He talks about abuse of power. He talks about corruption. He talks about things that really can't happen. It's all Hollywood. But anyhow, he talks about things like that, and he brings things to light. So we don't have a release date for that yet, but it's coming out. I know that's a lot, but why? Why is Hollywood putting out so much that either has Christian values or themes through it, or is somewhat based on the movie? Now, the last one I want to talk to you about is a movie called Noah. Now, this is going to be done by Paramount Pictures, and when that comes out, because Paramount is releasing it, because of the money they have behind it, because Russell Crowe is in it, a lot of people are going to go see this. If you look at the trailer, you're going to think it's a biblical-based movie. It's not. With Noah, you're going to find out that when the sons enter the ark with him, 2 of the sons don't have wives. One of the wives is pregnant. She gives birth to twin girls. The assumption is that those girls become the wives of the other 2 brothers. So, to stay with the Bible, only 8 people come off the ark. There's a story on there where a bad guy, the villain, gets actually into the ark. He breaks through the pitch, gets into the ark, and him and Noah have a scene, and Noah ends up killing him. So biblically, you know, he does not come off the ark, and it's Hollywood. You know, so as a believer, when you see this movie, you're going to be very upset because it takes the Bible story and completely blows it out of the water. No pun intended. But if so many people are seeing it, you know, do you want their theology to be based on that, or do you want them to understand the true story of the flood and Noah, and why God brought the flood? The evilness of man, you know, sin, redemption, so on and so forth. That theme is in the movie. There is sin, there is repentance, there is redemption, so on and so forth. But people, I think, will see other aspects of it. So again, it's not a movie I'm excited about. It's not a movie I'm going to go run out and see. But it is a movie I'm looking forward to talking about with people, so that we can bring them to the true story of the gospel. Anyhow, Hollywood's going to give us a lot of tools. We can reject them, we can use them. I just think for revival, it's another chance to give us a chance to sit down with people, co-workers, friends, family, neighbors, and really talk about the true story of the gospel, who Jesus really is. As you pray about this and as you see these movies coming out, I'll be praying for you. So God bless you.